Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm David Percy. Up first, we've got on the river breakup map, there's a flood warning out now along the Tanana River, and that's at Manly, and that's flood warning is out through Sunday, and that's for ice jam caused flooding that's currently going on. And again, that warning is out through Sunday, through tomorrow. And then back to the west there's a flood watch out now for the Yukon River at Eagle, and that's out through Monday evening there. Possibility of ice jam flooding occurring in the Eagle area. Conditions have improved or become conducive to a greater chance of seeing some ice jam flooding at Eagle on the Yukon there, but it's just a flood watch at this point. And the flood watch continues there for the Kuskokwim River through the remainder of the weekend here through tomorrow night for the again Kuskokwim River from Stony River to Crooked Creek there, the Stony River being the easternmost yellow dot there, and then Crooked Creek the westernmost. Otherwise, moving on to satellite imagery, we've got several bands of moisture coming across the northern Bering Sea, one making landfall earlier today along the northwest coast Seward Peninsula, bringing some gusty winds, snow, and rain up into that area there. Western Arctic coast down into the St. Lawrence Island area. And then the next band farther to the south now, approaching the Pribilof Islands here during the afternoon hours. Otherwise, convection developing over the central interior, thunderstorms there over the central interior, south of Fairbanks, then an isolated lightning strike or two on the leading edge of that cloud shield moving in toward the Bethel area there. But generally sunshine. Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, temperatures rising well into the 50s, many areas, the Kenai Peninsula, Menuska-Susitna Valley. More clouds, though, over the Copper River Basin, eastern Alaska Range, and shower activity with mostly cloudy skies in those areas all the way up across, up toward Arctic Village there. But basically a dry day over the Panhandle with some partial clearing. But you can see northwest winds cleared it out across Kodiak Island, especially on the east side there, temperature pushing 60 degrees. And Bristol Bay, the same thing. Winds up along the northwest coast, Cape Lisburne with the frontal boundary there, seeing winds gusting to 45 miles an hour with light snow, while Kivalina seeing gusts to 30 miles an hour with light snow. And Kotzebue reporting light snow with winds gusting to 25 miles per hour. So pretty windy conditions, but nothing too terribly strong, certainly not anything damaging as far as the winds go, and visibility's down to maybe a mile in the snow. Other areas seeing some rainfall, especially as the afternoon wears on. And looking at the chart, there's the main frontal boundary there pushing onto the northwest coast, coming across the Bering Strait. St. Lawrence Island area pushing the moisture into the mostly into the northern interior, Seward Peninsula on up into the northwest Noatak Valley area, and Kobuk Valley to the western Arctic coast, and now some moisture poised to move into the Pribilof Islands, and then the developing convection over the central interior there with showers down in the Copper River Basin. About a tenth of an inch of precipitation in the last 12 hours falling at Delta Junction, Nenana, Fairbanks, and Donlin, a little farther to the west, had 0.13 of an inch of rainfall, but dry over the Panhandle for tonight. That front pushes moisture farther south into the Kuskokwim Valley. Looks like rain will move into the Pribilof Islands. Winds not all that strong, 15 to 25 miles an hour there, but 20 gusts, 40 to 45 miles an hour up towards St. Lawrence Island, southwest coast, Seward Peninsula area, especially in advance of the frontal system there, with snow pushing eastward, rain and snow and rain, depending on your latitude and elevation, but stays dry. Clouds will tend to increase over Cook Inlet, And then the outlook for Sunday, kind of a variably cloudy to mostly sunny condition. Definitely sunshine, Kodiak Island, continued northwest winds. Clouds will be on the increase for Cook Inlet and south central Alaska in the afternoon, start to thicken and lower a little bit there as some moisture comes in, but definitely staying dry. Maybe some rainfall getting into the Kuskokwim Valley in the afternoon hours, but the best chance with the gusty winds, Yukon Delta coast on up across all the western interior and then east-northeastward covering much of the Brooks Range. And mainly the western North Slope, central western Arctic coast will see the heaviest amounts of the light precipitation. Another mostly sunny day for the Copper River Basin and the Panhandle. And then the outlook for Monday, that low drops to eastern Prince William Sound, so it looks like a pretty damp day. Snow and rain, Copper River Basin, down to the North Gulf Coast with shower activity into northern Cook Inlet and the Mananuska-Susitna Valley, but a widespread area of light precipitation, the former rain or snow covering much of the interior, but still mostly sunny over the Panhandle, and high pressure builds in over and dominates the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Lows tonight, teens to mid-20s, Arctic coast North Slope, otherwise mostly in the lower to mid-30s over the interior, and mid to upper 30s out over the Aleutians, 35 to 40 south central Alaska, 35 to 40 for the Panhandle. Highs for Sunday afternoon, mid to upper 50s for the southeast coast, very nice conditions there, some areas pushing 60, and mid-50s for the Copper River Basin, Mananuska-Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, but cooler 40s there up in the Fairbanks area, but Fort Yukon might push 55, near freezing on the Arctic coast. Lows for Monday morning, teens and 20s for the Arctic coast North Slope into the Brooks Range, but south of the mountains, lows 30 to 35, about covers it there from the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta coast to 40 south central Alaska, 35 to 40 for the Panhandle. Highs for Sunday afternoon, mid to upper 50s for the southeast coast, very nice conditions there, some areas pushing 60, and mid-50s for the Copper River Basin, Mananuska-Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula, but cooler 40s there up in the Fairbanks area, but Fort Yukon might push 55, near freezing on the Arctic coast. Lows for Monday morning, teens and 20s for the Arctic coast North Slope into the Brooks Range, but south of the mountains, lows 30 to 35, about covers it.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Okay, looking at flying weather for Sunday morning, some IFR western central Arctic coast, another batch of IFR coming across the Bering Sea, pushing in earlier on into St. Lawrence Island and up to the Bering Strait, southern Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, eastward across the Nulato Hills into the lower Yukon River Valley areas, extending down into the Kuskokwim Delta, right to the bay, and then marginal VFR there from the Pribilofs to St. Matthew Island and into the Yukon Delta coast, and also pushing down to the Alaska Peninsula. Some marginal VFR lingering there along the central Alaska Range and into the upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country up toward Chena and the White Mountain areas. And southern Alaska, though, east and south of the Alaska Range, including Bristol Bay, VFR, Kodiak VFR, Panhandle VFR, marginal VFR, west coast of Prince of Wales Island. And then for the afternoon, pretty good area of IFR with that system coming into the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, Bering Strait, right up into the northwest interior, as well as the coast, not quite to Point Lay, and then eastward across the Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley, southern slopes of the central Brooks Range. Marginal VFR now advancing into the almost up to Fort Yukon, and staying VFR for the eastern Arctic coast and North Slope, eastern Brooks Range, eastern interior, all VFR, and east and south of the Alaska Range, nothing but VFR, including Kodiak Island, there, Kenai Peninsula, all of the Panhandle, some lingering marginal VFR in the coastal areas, south coast of the southwest coast of Prince of Wales Island, and then a band of marginal VFR across the southern Bering Sea, just clipping the Pribilofs into the western Aleutians. And that area more or less expands a little bit on Monday morning, marginal VFR southern Bering Sea, but VFR Adak-Atka areas. Kodiak, VFR once again, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, marginal VFR slipping on down into the Talkeetnas, Mananuska Valley, and possibly into the Susitna Valley, maybe to Turnagain Arm, but eastern Copper River Basin staying VFR right on down the southeast coast. Widespread IFR now in the central interior into the northern Kuskokwim Valley, western slopes of the western Alaska Range, back up to the Arctic coast. and that area slips a little to the east by Monday afternoon. IFR from the central Arctic coast all the way down through the central interior into the northern Kuskokwim Valley to the western Alaska Range, and that includes or covers the Tanana, Nenana, Fairbanks, Manly area, and marginal VFR over toward the eastern border, marginal VFR North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, now along the north coast of the Panhandle, otherwise staying pretty good there. And nice conditions continue. Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, marginal VFR out over the Bering Sea, but the Aleutians looking pretty good, mostly VFR, some areas of marginal conditions. And the Tuvik, downward trending conditions, marginal VFR trending toward IFR into the afternoon, same forecast for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR to start, becoming marginal at some point in the day. Definitely by afternoon, best chance, especially on the western entrance of all three western Alaska Range passes, will be the lowest conditions tomorrow. VFR off to the east, windy, marginal VFR on the increase. Isabel staying VFR, Mentasta VFR, Tanita stays VFR, as well as Portage, Chilkoot, and White. Taking a look at the freezing levels, warm air with that westerly flow and southwest flow with the frontal boundary to the north. So 8,000 feet in over the southwest Bering Sea and 2,000 feet right up to St. Lawrence Island and 2,000 feet up to the Old Crow area there in the east and 4,000 feet over the Yukon and Panhandle. And moving on to icing. Bulk of the moisture there to the north and northwest coming across the far northern Bering Sea. Possible considerable moderate around the Seward Peninsula area, maybe trying to slip into Kotzebue Sound. Otherwise, isolated moderate 4 to 14,000 feet. Taking a look at the jet stream, westerlies 105 to 115 knots carrying that system eastward right into the interior and turning northwest 60 knots over south central Alaska. And at 9,000 feet, west-northwest, 40 to 70 knots there, 50 knots now into the western interior, out of the west, turning northwest across Bristol Bay at about 35 knots, and 45-knot westerlies coming into the Yukon Delta coast of Norton Sound, turning south 25 for the western Brooks Range, 40-knot westerlies across the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay area. Results in moderate chop, surface to 6,000 feet, southern Cook Inlet to Fognak Island, also the Yukon Delta and eastern Norton Sound.
We can't just put the fires out because we can't put them out. We've tried that now for a century and it doesn't work. It just makes the next one worse.
You may see a place like this and think, total devastation. And it's not your fault for thinking that.
But that depiction is, as we've learned from countless experts over the last 2 weeks, not the whole story, and not how you should think about wildfires.
The truth is, there are lots of types of habitats out west, and fire affects them all in unique ways. So it's important to start thinking about the big picture with wildland fires. So let's first rewind. To help us understand what's going on out west, Rob and I started calling up the experts, and what we found was that the story of fire, particularly in the west, is complex. So to understand it, we planned a road trip.
Road trip time!
The goal of our road trip was to see as many forests as we could and meet experts around the region to help us understand the role fire plays out here. First destination was to find the forest burned by the now famous Great Fires of 1910. And at the heart of what is known as the Big Blow-Up, the logical first place to stop, the city of Wallace.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Good. Haley and I are in this cute town of Wallace, Idaho, which was completely destroyed by the 1910 fires. You can see how much damage this fire actually did. Let's send up the drone and see what the surroundings look like now. What we found was a small town surrounded by a dense forest, with every single tree just over 100 years old.
So everything we see behind us now, that's all new growth since 1910.
And to help us put these historic fires and the forests around Wallace in perspective, we met up with historian Diane Smith.
This is Wallace, and here are your fires.
All of this is the 1910 fires?
This is not that unusual. The fact is, it just was at a time in our development as a country. We noticed it, we paid attention to it, and we got the national attention for it.
Right. As it turns out, these fires helped reinforce the idea at the time that every fire needed to be suppressed at all costs. And this suppression for so long has led to new problems, namely thick forests full of fuel. But don't just take my word for it. Let me show you the difference.
Notice how different this place is than this one that has been thinned out quite heavily in the past, or like an area like this that's been burnt quite frequently.
In fact, both of these areas show how many forests would have looked in the past under regular burns. The dead and low-growing material gets consumed easily by fire, very much unlike this forest, which has had fire suppression for over 100 years and could lead to a high-intensity fire.
And all of this dry, dead material, that's problematic.
So we went looking for a big fire and just followed the smoke. Oh gosh, a huge crown fire. I gotta get this. These high-intensity fires aren't great because in many forests they kill all the trees over a large area, even in forests that used to be very resistant to frequent fires. And nobody knows that better than the people that work in this particular forest.
There's green coming back, and I guess I've gotten somewhat used to it, and I still have hope that the entire Sierra Nevadas won't look like this, that we can maybe get ahead of it. So the fires nowadays can move from the surface right into the tree canopies really easily, where in the past, fires would have kept trees pruned, they would have kept fuel densities low, and so now you end up with a lot more high severity fires in the West than had a fire regime kept under its historic recurrence. This to me is more a lesson of fire exclusion and keeping fire out of the system. If we're keeping it out of when it would burn with a beneficial effect, it will burn, and the probability of it burning at an unbeneficial state is higher.
So again, this is where it's complicated. We thought if only we could stop the fires, we'd win the fight. But the fires like the King Fire here show that stopping the fires only made it worse. Add that to the fact that we're living closer than ever to these wild lands. So to help us understand the wildland-urban interface, we met up with CAL FIRE. And as we were pulling up to this neighborhood, one of the residents quickly came out to tell us about the latest fire.
Yeah, our biggest fear is fire. It was very scary. I mean, everybody was honking and get out, and you know, there's a fire.
This is the risk across California. The response piece alone isn't going to solve this challenge if the homeowners aren't organized.
Because we're all in the same boat. We're one match away from everybody losing everything. It's a real fear.
Literally, we could have that fire spread up in here within a matter of seconds.
Wow.
California is going to have fires. We're not going to stop all the fires in California, so we have to have an infrastructure that's fire resistant. We need to work on policies that help us engage in active management of our forest. That's using prescribed fire as a tool. It's all the things in the toolbox. It's a combination of managing our forest and a combination of protecting our communities that are in it.
If it wasn't complicated enough, this made it very clear that you can't just let the fires burn whenever they start. The forests need to be managed to help mitigate the risk to us. But using fire seems to be one of the keys to making things safer, and knowing the science behind fire is always key to implementing good management.
Fire Sciences Lab, right over here.
So we made a stop at the Missoula Fire Lab to try to understand what we know about fire.
What? You see the flames at the very top and how they're sticking to the slope?
They really are. Everybody's laying down.
They're laying down. Well, that's flame attachment. Actually a very difficult thing to understand.
Here at the Fire Lab, the scientists study the basics of fire. Understanding the complexities here helps firefighters and forest managers in the field better predict and fight wildland fires.
Fires are inevitable. The only choices that we really have is what kind of fire to have and when do we want it. And that's it. Almost? Ready. You're ready. Jason's ready.
Mark's team is prepping to light a huge bed of precisely cut cardboard.
You're not going to be in any danger. So when the lights go out, don't move. Gasoline.
This is one of many experiments they'll run to understand the physics of fire, how it moves, how it spreads, and all of this measured by precise scientific instruments and high-speed cameras. tens of thousands of pieces of cardboard up in flames in mere seconds. The ongoing research will help us better understand fire with the ultimate goal that we can live better with it. But can we do that? There is one forest we knew of that seems to have figured out this coexistence with fire, a place where fires burn all summer, every summer. It's part of their way of life and a mentality we wanted to know about. And here we went out with our guides Frank Lake and Steve Valentine, who work with the local U.S. Forest Service and tribe to help keep a healthy forest.
This is perfect. The fire's basically come through and cleared out the understory, and all that's left are the trees.
Yeah, it's black and it's charred, and you just see a few of the earliest sprouts, but you come back in here a year, it's gonna be alive again.
And to many, this may seem destroyed, but they view it differently here.
That fire's medicine, because it's not if it comes, it's when it comes. We need fire, and fire needs us.
You see, fire needs people to remind us how important fire is to the ecosystem. Frank and Steve's ancestors have been burning this forest for millennia. It's now part of what makes the forest special. They just want to make sure that it's not forgotten.
Basically, what you leave behind is what's important.
When they say this is your foods and your medicines, your sacred places, your springs, your water, that's essential, that's who we are as people. We have to learn to live with fire. We have to learn to respect fire. We have to maintain that security. That's why I do what I do.
Haley and I have learned a lot on our journey. We've learned that fire is complicated, and it's not as black and white as we make it out to be, and it is an integral part of our forests. They've had fire running through them for thousands of years, and they will continue to have fire in them in the future. And we can't always put the fires out. We have to decide what kind of fires to live with, and that is why we need to work with these fire crews from around the country. We also need a public who understands the importance of fire on the landscape. A healthy forest, you see, is a forest that lives with fire.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the coastal water forecast, marine forecast for the Panhandle. We've got small current advisories for the south coast. Northwest winds 25 knots, seas 10 feet. Lighter winds up north coast, looking at northwest 15 to 20 knots. And central, southern, inner channels and inside waters, northwest winds 10 knots with slight seas. Lincoln Glacier Bay, north winds at 10 knots. And moving ahead to the day on, Monday, we've got south winds of 15 knots for the northern inner channels and Stevens Passage, southwest at 10. Clarence Strait looking at a northwest breeze of 15 knots with 3-foot seas. And the central and south coast, west winds 20 knots, seas 8 feet. And the north coast, southwest winds at 20 knots with seas just under 10 feet. Prince William Sound, northwest winds 15 knots for Sunday, seas 3 feet. And around Middleton Island, winds will be west at 15 knots, but small craft advisories for the western North Gulf Coast, northwest winds 25 knots. 30-knot westerly winds for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands. And for southern Cook Inlet, small craft advisories, west winds 25 knots with 9-foot seas north of the Forelands, south at 15. Those will turn west at 15 on Monday. Otherwise, small craft advisories a little stronger for southern Cook Inlet, west at 30 knots. And gales now in the forecast for Kamishak Bay out of the northwest at 35 knots, west winds 35 knots for both the Barren Islands and western North Gulf Coast, seas 12 feet. Small craft advisories for the eastern North Gulf Coast, northwest winds at 30 knots. And also small craft advisories for Prince William Sound on Monday for northwest winds at 25 knots, but seas only forecast to be about 3 feet. Kodiak Island, west winds 30 knots, seas 8 feet. And Bristol Bay and the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, small craft advisories for southwest winds at 30 knots. Pacific side of the peninsula looking at west winds at 20 knots. And for Monday, west-northwest 25 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, northwest 30 knots for Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, west-northwest winds 30 knots with 9-foot seas. Fox Islands, southwest or west-southwest 15 to 25 knots for the day on Sunday. Otherwise, southwest 10 to 20 knots for Adak and Atka, and southwest winds 20 knots from Chitka to Shemya. For Monday, western Aleutians, light winds from Shimiadakiska southeast of 15 knots, northeast 25 knots on Chitka Island. Adak northeast winds a little stronger, 20 to 30 knots. And for Unimak Island, northeast 20 to 25 knots, and northwest to northeast at 20 knots for Unalaska Island. Southwest coast for Sunday, southwest winds 30 knots, seas 10 feet. Pribilof, southwest winds 30 knots, seas 11 feet. St. Matthew Island, west winds at 30 knots with 12-foot seas. And St. Lawrence Island, southwest winds 30 knots. Norton Sound, south at 30 knots. And for Monday, Norton Sound, still small craft advisories, northwest winds 30 knots. Small craft advisories for St. Lawrence Island, northwest winds at 25 knots. And the Yukon Delta coast, northwest at 20 knots with west 25 knot winds there blowing into Kuskokwim Bay. Pribilof's northwest at 20. For the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast for Sunday, south winds 15 knots. And for the west side, southeast winds 15 knots. From Wales to Cape Thompson, southeast winds 20 knots. And those will swing around to the northwest and kick up to 30 knots. So we got brisk wind advisories from Wales to Cape Beaufort for northwest winds at 25 to 30 knots, and the western Arctic coast northwest at 20 knots. But for the central coast all the way to Demarcation Point, winds will be east at 15 knots. Looking at tonight again, front pushing across the northern Bering Sea into the Seward Peninsula will continue to increase the snow and rain mixed, or just plain rain, along with increasing gusty south to southwest winds, especially in advance of the front. That'll push some moisture all the way down into Togiak Bay. Showers linger in the mountainous terrain of the Aleutian Range there, otherwise dry over the eastern interior and panhandle. And for Sunday, that low center tracks to about Shishmaref. Look for less wind, but a widespread area of moisture in the form of snow or rain and snow mixed, mostly rain as you head south there toward the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. And dry over the southeast interior. Sunny for Kodiak Island, mostly sunny south central Alaska, but increasing clouds in the afternoon, mostly sunny for the panhandle. Monday, widespread area of rain or snow showers or snow for the Arctic coast all the way down to the North Gulf Coast, but dry over the southern southeast coast. High pressure builds over the Bering Sea for light winds and clearing with dry conditions.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.